Good afternoon and welcome to this October 28th, 2020 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format we're using in response to Governor Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives order. This format enables the City Council to meet and take care of business while keeping its members, staff, and the public safe. For work sessions like this one, where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials web page. And as always, other forms of communication with me, city councilors and staff are available, including email and voicemail. Thank you again for joining us. And our first item of business, I'll turn it over to the Assistant City Manager, Christy Hammett, in just a minute, but I wanted to make a statement about the defacement of the mural earlier this week. As many of you know, on Monday night, that mural that was newly painted on a wall off West Park Street between 7th and 8th Avenues was defaced by blue paint. The mural was conceived as a project to bring people together. Instead, it has become a source of anger, frustration, pain, and now criminal defacement. We are all living under tremendous pressure and experiencing in many ways the impact of long-standing divisions within our community. The work of understanding and coming together is hard. We will make mistakes. We will misinterpret intentions. Anger begets anger unless you exercise your sense of fairness and openness to a better path. This crime will be investigated by our police. We are a week away from a divisive election, and our police are already on deck, as we'll hear in just a few minutes, to anticipate as much as possible the reaction and possible protests to the election outcome. It is time to commit ourselves toward building a community where it is safe to express an opinion without being targeted for reprisals. Destruction in any form does not help our police department nor our communities of color. We have an opportunity to talk constructively about our different reactions to this mural and the path forward for that piece of public art. It is time to strengthen and allow cooler heads to prevail and to take that path. And with that, I will turn to Christy Hammett for our first item of business, an update from the police chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Council. I'm stepping in today for a little bit for City Manager Mederi. She'll be joining you soon. She had a previous commitment. So I just wanted to say a couple of things before we launch into the elections preparedness conversation with Chief Skinner. One is that our elections office has reported, Lane County Elections has reported that things are going very, very well. And as usual, they're doing an outstanding job. They do so every election season and should be commended for the excellent work that they do around planning. As of the end of the day on Tuesday, 144,802 voters had returned their ballots. That represents about 53% of the 273,169 registered voters. This number is twice the amount that was returned at this time in 2016. So it's just phenomenal that people are getting out there and doing that. Also wanted to share that Tuesday was the last day the post office recommended for returning a ballot by mail. So voters should really try to use the ballot boxes that are available. And I just want to again share my very deep appreciation for the work of the elections office staff and Lane County and all the work they're doing to create a safe environment for this to go forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chief Skinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, I'm multitasking here, and it's probably not a big shock. The majority of what I'm doing while I'm preparing for comments with you centers around continued preparedness for our election week and checking on some protests that may be planned for that week and whether or not we have permits and whether or not we're working with protest organizers. And it sounds like some of those discussions have really developed nicely over the last month to 2, where we have more people wanting to engage us in dialogue around what they're trying to accomplish, and more importantly, how we can help them accomplish those things safely. And I was asked by KEZI just 30 minutes ago, what would you tell people to make sure that they're being safe during this time of potential protests or demonstrations? And what I tell them is to make sure it's well organized and make sure you connect with your police department, because we really do want to create a safe atmosphere for people to be able to have their First Amendment right heard and their voices heard during this tough time. We are really hopeful for this community. And if you've heard me do any media stuff around elections week, I'm really, really hopeful for this community and our ability to be civil and respectful for each other as we move through these elections. I'm trying to have a level of optimism for our community out of this police department that hopefully will be infectious. And while saying that, I also know that part of what my job is to have a police department that's prepared to respond in the event that we see some things go the other direction. And so we've been working on that plan for several weeks now. And I won't go into any of the details of the plan, because there's certainly some strategies there that we want to make sure that we keep to ourselves. But what I can tell you is that we've met with Lane County Elections. We are in communication with them. We are aware of some of our higher volume Dropbox sites and have a really good game plan, and have had a really good game plan around increased visibility and drive-bys and extra patrols around our Dropbox sites, so people can feel safe about dropping off their ballots. And just to have that added visibility seems to be a calming sense for most of our community as we're in and about the Dropbox sites. We are have restricted days off for my entire department, and have readjusted shifts for all sworn staff to be available in the event that we have activities that call for additional resources above and beyond the resources we have on duty. We are acutely aware that we are going to be on our own mostly in this situation. If we see issues here, I'm guessing many of our law enforcement partners that we would call upon for mutual aid will also see similar issues in their communities. And so we do not want to be drawing resources out of other areas that so desperately and deeply need those. And so we're preparing to be able to take care of ourselves in this particular situation. And I'm very, very confident in the men and women that you have in this police department and the way that they're trained, and what we've learned over the last 6 or 8 months to be prepared for any kind of unrest, something that sneaks up on us. We've got at least one event that we know of that's planned for either election day or the day after. I believe it's been permitted, and I think we're working with those organizers, and so that's always much appreciated, and we'll continue to ask people to try and do that. But we stand at the ready and prepared to protect this community and to make sure that it's safe for everyone, regardless of your opinion, regardless of how you choose to vote that particular day. We are striving to be and want to continue to be a police department for everybody in this community. And that means protecting everyone in this community, regardless of their opinion. We recognize that this is an emotional time, and probably unlike any other election we've seen before with respect to the accumulation of stress over the 2020 year. And with that brings high levels of emotion and oftentimes not great decision-making when people are really, really emotional. And so we're asking people to exercise calm and restraint as we move through election week together. We recognize some people's feeling like they need to be out in force in some respect to help the police keep the peace. And what I would tell you is that we are perfectly capable of deploying our trained men and women wearing this uniform and proudly wearing this badge can protect this community, and we don't need that extra help. While I recognize and respect people's constitutional rights, and I want to preserve and protect those constitutional rights, I'm asking people to exercise restraint. And some of the things that happen regardless of who you are, that we've seen throughout this summer is the addition of open carrying of weapons at these really emotionally charged events. That is not value added for your police department. All it takes is emotions to run high for one act of negligence to forever change the landscape of a community. And we just don't want that. And so we're asking people to be loud and proud, be heard, exercise your right to be heard, but just please understand that your very capable police department has things well in hand and can take care of this community the way we know this community needs to be taken care of. So, with that, I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can. I will respectfully let you know if it's in the details that we can't share. I'll just let you know that we're not at liberty to share that particular strategy yet, but want to be able to entertain any questions that you may have at this point.
Thank you so much, Chief. I think that we all have a tremendous amount of confidence in you and in your force, and appreciate your preparation and anticipation of this coming week, because we are all on edge, and appreciate that calm preparation. I have Greg in the queue. Greg, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for that report, Chief. I really appreciate it. I think the rest of us do too. But one thing that I was concerned about, and then I have another question for Christy, is the security of those drop boxes. And this may be a broader issue countywide. And I'm wondering if you guys are working with the other police agencies and the county sheriff's office in case somebody drops, for example, and I'm not encouraging this at all, decides to drop an incendiary device into one of those boxes or some other kind of, device that would, damage or destroy, valid ballots.
Yeah, what I can tell you, Councilor Evans, is that with Lane County elections, that call with them involved law enforcement leaders throughout the entire county. And so we're having these discussions, not just on a local, Eugene boundary level, but those are discussions around a variety of the Dropbox sites countywide, and any concerns people are having. What I would tell you is, of course, there may be things that we don't have on our radar screen that may happen, but special investigations, working closely with Northwest Fusion Center and the FBI, has been monitoring an awful lot of intelligence, or at least trying to monitor intelligence around what we think may be happening that day and that week. And it has been very, very quiet. And that's very encouraging right now to know that there's not a lot of actionable intelligence that's out there. Now, having said that, we have to be prepared for anything. But so far, everybody has been conducting themselves very, very well. And so we'll continue to monitor that and continue to connect with our other law enforcement partners about that. Here locally, it's been about visibility for us. It's been about doing drive-bys. It's been about trying to find that balance between EPD involvement and also understanding that sometimes when EPD is involved, that has an opposite effect on people and not feeling comfortable. And so trying to thread that needle is tough with respect to how much involvement we need to have, but we have those Dropbox sites on our radar screen, and we're certainly paying attention to those.
And Christy, this is kind of related to that. What do we have in place in terms of coordinated responses from social service agency, nonprofit, and the city around, dealing with trauma, both pre-election and post-election, for many of our residents that, are going to have some very strong feelings about whatever the outcome of the election is.
Councilor Evans,
we have a plan.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Didn't need to. Councilor Evans, that's an excellent question. And I know a lot of people, that's front of mind, continuing to figure out what the support systems are in place to help people, regardless post the election. And so what I know is that those conversations are happening. I don't know what all the specific plans are within the nonprofits. I know that, we're continuing to talk with our organization and being supportive and respectful as we go through this process together. But I could find out some more information for you and see if I can get some specifics, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be great because I've had a number of people ask me about that, and I would like to be able to respond affirmatively that we have some kind of response in place with mental health professionals or whoever to assist folks with their emotional trauma around this election.
I'll follow up. Thank you so much.
Okay, Alan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chief, for all of that that you said and that you're doing and making sure that we're safe around this period of time. I did want to know if the ballot drop boxes, maybe Christy, you know, if the ballot drop boxes are on camera so that they're being surveilled, having surveillance on them. So if someone were to tamper with them, they could be busted.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if maybe Chief Skinner does, but I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that, but as you say that, Councilor Zelenka, it makes me want to, right after we get off this call, make sure that our Guardian trailers are in some key locations and we can get those cameras up. My guess is those are deployed for a variety of different reasons throughout our community, and I'll check on that, but that's a great, we have a couple of those Dropbox sites that are really, really high volume sites. And right. We can provide for some extra security with some of those cameras. So I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, actually, you beat me to the punch. I was going to suggest that we have cameras if they're not. In particular, the one across from the county building and the one at the elections office, probably the two highest volume ones. There's several others. There's a bunch of them around town. So if we could head that off by having a presence with those cameras, that would be awesome. I also wanted to say, despite the erroneous statements from our president, the vote by mail in Oregon is extremely safe and works extremely well. In fact, if you have a problem with your ballot being rejected by signature, not matching, or some other problem, the Blaine County will actually send you a letter and call you, I think they call you, so that you have, I think, up to 14 days to remedy those ballots and make them valid. So if you're concerned about that, you can go to the website, track your ballot, but you'll also be forewarned that you can remedy and fix your ballot if it becomes a problem. So we have an extremely low percentage of ballots that are actually reduced or thrown out. So voting by mail is extremely safe. And if you put it in a Dropbox, even safer. Thanks.
Thank
Councilor
you.
Zelenka, we, in an effort to show you how effective we are, Laura Hammond informs me that we have a Guardian trailer at 8th and Pearl.
8th and Pearl, right? Cool. That's fast response, Chief.
Well, I don't think it was there 30 seconds ago. I think Laura Hammond took care of that while you're speaking.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's nice to have a responsive police chief, you know?
There you go. Emily and then Claire.
Thank you. Thank you for the planning. You don't have to check elections on 10th and Lincoln because there's been a Guardian trailer out there since the first couple of days. There's usually a security car in the back. And last week when I walked by, there was big cement pads and some bark mulch, and I was really confused because we're taking cement out to plant trees. And then I came by on Friday and there's 4 huge bollards. I mean, not to your calf, they're like waist height. So they're across the front door. One side has smaller ones in front of the window. The other side has windows without any. But you would need a tank or one of those really, really big construction machines to get in there. So I'm not sure what somebody might be thinking to do to the front door, but they're not going to get in with the vehicle. So Blaine County's working on that side and the Guardian trailer's watching the other side. I live 2 blocks away. So once again, if we have any excitement, I bet I'll get to see it. Thanks.
Okay, Claire?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Some of what I was going to offer was said. So I had seen the Guardian trailer outside the Lane County Elections Office when I dropped my ballot off on Monday. And I'm fairly certain the box on Pearl is labeled as being under surveillance. I don't know if that changed when we tore down the old City Hall and took the bridge out. But my understanding is that it is under surveillance. But thank you, Chief Skinner, for the preparations, the thoughtful preparations. I especially appreciate you noting that for some folks in the community, seeing a police officer parked near a ballot drop box might feel intimidating rather than comforting. So I recognize that you are trying to be thoughtful about how you provide that visible security and reassure folks that, you know, our right to vote is being protected during an especially fraught time in our nation's history. So I share your optimism is helping me feel more optimistic about how the days following the election will play out, at least for us locally. And I really appreciate the leadership that you're providing to the department. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other folks needing to comment who haven't had a chance? Scanning, okay. All right, I thank you. Again, thank you, Chief, for briefing us on that. Thank you for all the preparation. I think we all do feel a little reassured, and that's every little reassurance these days counts for a lot. So thank you again, and I think we are on for our next item of business. And Christy, I guess I'll turn that your way, or?
Sure. Happy to introduce Beth Forrest, also known as our timer, the clock person.
Not today.
So Beth is going to provide us with a process update today. As you know that last January, you made some decisions about piloting some changes in terms of the process. And so we're going to give you some updates and looking forward to hearing your feedback about how things are going. And with that, I'll turn it over to Beth Forrest and Brooke Freed.
Thanks, Christy, and good afternoon, Mayor and Councilors. As Christy said, this work session is an opportunity for you to discuss several changes you made last January to your operating agreements to improve the efficiency of your council meetings. These changes, which were focused on the public forum process and the order of council agenda items, were to be implemented for a 6-month trial period. Staff is seeking direction today on whether you wish to make these changes permanent through the adoption of revised operating agreements or provide other direction. I'll briefly go over the changes, which are shown in bold red font in attachment A. As you may remember, after lengthy discussion, the council voted to pilot 4 changes to the public forum process and order of agenda items. These changes are, number 1, schedule committee reports and items of interest and the first consent calendar before the public forum at regular council meetings. Number 2, limit testimony during public forum to 2 minutes. Number 3, limit the times for public forum to 2 times a month for 90 minutes. And number 4, randomize the order of people speaking once they've signed up. One other change was requested without the 6-month pilot condition, but is included today for discussion as several councilors voiced support for some sort of trial period. That change is to separate out and remove annexations and other land use issues from the first consent calendar and list them as their own individual consent calendar item after public forum during regular council meetings. After council took action in January, we put all of these changes into effect immediately. And with the exception of the randomization pilot, have been using the new processes and the new agenda order consistently for the past 9 months. Unfortunately, the Zoom platform we have been using since the beginning of our remote meetings in April does not offer a good method for objectively managing the randomization of speakers. I would like to note, however, that prior to our virtual meetings, staff had devised a system for entering all speakers into a spreadsheet that was capable of quickly generating a randomized list that we could then provide to the mayor in advance of the public forum. So we know that that can easily be done. In addition to the piloted changes, several other updates to your processes were also approved in January. They're shown in bold green in attachment A and will be incorporated into the revised operating agreements. If after your discussion, council is comfortable making the piloted changes permanent, there is a motion in your packet that directs staff to return with a resolution amending the operating agreements. And with that, I look forward to your conversation and direction.
Thank you, Beth. It's amazing. We've been doing this for 9 months. So that transition feels so complete to me. I almost lost track of the fact that we've made those changes. So counselors with questions or comments about the changes? Betty, take it away.
Thank you. I disagree with all of them, I think. I think if we're going to limit the public to 2 minutes, maybe we should limit council to 2 minutes also. I think if people have carefully prepared, that 3 minutes is a good time. But I do approve of if we're going to, of not limiting once people get there. So if it's going to be at the last minute, change to 2 minutes, it's better just to have it uniform. But I think that 3 minutes was a better time. And I would like to see council try 2 minutes or 1 minute. The time, 90 minutes sounds like plenty, but if there's a really important issue, sometimes it may take longer than that. So I don't approve of limiting the time either. Randomizing, I think, is really wrong. That's the thing I have the most disagreement with. I think if people have the initiative to get there early, then they should be able to speak early instead of someone who just gets out of bed and comes in and says, I'd like to speak. That's the main one I have a problem with. Separating the annexation maybe. And I thought it was better when we had counselor comments at the early meeting, but I don't feel strongly about that. And of course I won't be there, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Thanks. So I'm gonna agree with a lot of the stuff that Betty said. I think the randomization is unnecessary. We did it, I think maybe 2 or 3 times. It didn't seem like an unnecessary step that didn't really produce anything. And maybe that was because we didn't get to try it very long, but I would not be in favor of continuing that. That seems unnecessary. I'm not really set on 2 or 3 minutes, but I don't think that once someone shows up, the times should change. So I'd be much more in favor of going with the 2 minutes if we could guarantee those 2 minutes than doing 3 minutes and then sometimes cutting it back. Because I know I've come to council before and had my time cut and like my anxiety level just skyrocketed because I'm like trying to cut things in the audience and I was already nervous enough and that did not help. So I would rather we just picked a time and stuck to it. So if we can do that at the 2 minutes, I'm in favor of the 2 minutes. And I also agree with Betty that while it can sometimes be difficult and exhausting to sit through a very long public forum, sometimes I think that's necessary. And I would also be okay with not having the 90-minute limit. And that is it. Oh, wait, I had one more thing. So this doesn't really pertain to these, but when we go back to normal and we're meeting in person, I really think we should consider how we might be able to have testimony via phone or via Zoom in the future. I know we haven't gotten a lot of people, but I just like the idea of thinking about this in a new way. That's one of the things they talked about at the breakout session I was at with the Economic Summit with diversity, equity, and inclusion, was just thinking about how you can bring people in different ways. And it might be something we could consider in the future.
Okay, thank you. Greg and then Emily.
Yeah, I was rechecking my AIS. Beth, did we do anything with regard to uh, doing a survey of the public and what their reaction is to the changes? Any kind of assessment, sans analysis. Do people like the 2 minutes? Would they rather go back to the 3 minutes? Do they, like the new format? What are their reactions back? And I'm sure that you probably have some anecdotal information around that. If you've got people who have made comments and we haven't quantified them, I would really like to know what that qualitative data shows.
Yeah, that's something we would have to get back to you on. We didn't have any official survey or method for gauging interest or reaction to it, but I could check back and see if we received any, just anecdotally. And
yeah, it would be great if we could, assess where the public is at in terms of their response to the changes, and if they're okay with that, or they would rather see us do something different or go back to what we were doing before. So I think that would provide clarity for all of us in terms of moving forward with these changes in this issue in a more permanent way.
Okay, Emily and then Chris.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for considering all these things. These are my opinions. If we're going to separate the land use from the consent, why don't we just do the consent calendar after the forum and, boom, boom, have it done. It doesn't seem like something the public would be especially interested in. As far as items, what is the purpose? Is it to inform the public or is it to inform council? Like, this is what my commission did, so the council needs to know about it. But in my feeling, items are a way for council to communicate with the public without being bound by what's in the AIS. And I really think it's valuable information. And when we did it at 5:30, I know not as many people watched the work session, so it felt a little lost. So I like that. Okay, I have a radical compromise because 2 minutes cuts people off and 3 minutes is too much. 2.5. I like it for everybody. Think about it. The 90 minutes, I like that our meetings are a reasonable length of time. However, I also agree that if we have a big issue like we had with the budget thing, we really need to hear people, but we should not change the time. 2.5 minutes is perfect. My other problem with if we don't limit the forum is we often have those important actions that we need to talk about, and they're at the end of forum. So if forum's an hour, hour and a half, it's not as difficult, but if it went on and on and on, I already have a problem with it. So that's just my whining about it. But I'd like it to change. The Zoom, I want to see those faces. I feel it's really weird to just sit here and look at our own faces. I can see how everybody else is reacting, but it's much harder to pay attention to our speakers and give them facial feedback. I like the idea when we get back to person to allowing some people to participate by Zoom. I think it's really could open up how many people come to forum. And I would like to hear from them. So 2.5 minutes, thanks.
Okay, Chris and then Claire.
Thank you. Interesting. The first thought I had was how, we were trying to create something that had a certain level of certainty to it. because the uncertainty was, I think, what was so problematic. Is it going to go 30 minutes? Is it going to go 2 hours? Is it going to go 3 hours? We had work to do, and it was very difficult for us to know if we could get our work done, if it was going to be a 3-hour session or a 2-hour session or whatever. So to me, 90 minutes provides certainty, and I think that's important. And so I think we've not really had a significant problem with the 90 minutes at this point. So I would leave it in place for now, which leads to my other point. We put these in place, as Beth said, in January. And within 2 or 3 months, we were on Zoom. So we have not had a fair test of this new system. And perhaps it might be better, rather than trying to make them permanent now, when we've never really had a good, solid test, to say, let's extend this for another 6 months. Hopefully we'll get back into a regular face-to-face meeting format and have a fair evaluation of whether or not these systems we've put in place are actually good or not. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes. I don't know. I would love to give people 3 minutes if we thought we were going to have a reasonable number of people come and speak. But if you have 200 people who want to speak for 3 minutes, you've created a huge amount of uncertainty about whether you can even do that. And so I think we need to test this some more. I've not personally felt that 2 minutes was a huge problem, but that's just my perception. I haven't had to speak for that amount of time. I'm happy, because I'm only going to be here for another 45 days or so, to be constrained to 2 minutes. I can figure out how to do 2 minutes. So that, for me, that's not a problem. But for me, the key point is, we put these in place because we were having some difficulty. We've not had the opportunity to test that yet. We went to Zoom, and Zoom has been an entirely different experience. I agree, we need to see the faces if that is at all possible. It's very constraining, particularly if we're going to keep using this format. But for me to try to make permanent the changes that we put in place for in-face meetings, in-person meetings, I think would be a challenge at this point. We haven't been in in-person meetings long enough to really test that system. People trying to sign up for the forum, it's a problem for them as well. So I say we hold off and wait till we can get back to in-person meetings and then decide what changes we want to make permanent. But for now, system seems to be working okay. If you want to go to 2.5 minutes, that's fine. I really think we should be able to see their faces. That would be very helpful, at least in the Zoom format.
Okay, Claire and then Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Chris makes some excellent points about, in terms of the public forum pieces, we really didn't get a chance to test drive this. You know, any qualitative data we might get from folks who participate in public forums is going to be really limited. So I would be interested in letting it pilot. I don't know if 6 months is enough time, because I don't know that we'll be meeting in person again in 6 months, and then we'd want probably at least 3 months to pilot and this new format. I agree with Councilor Simple about the 2.5 minutes. I think it's a nice compromise. It would, if we kept the 90-minute time frame, that would allow approximately 30 people to speak within that time frame. I feel that if we have 45 people who really want to speak on an urgent topic, the mayor could have, or the council president could have the discretion of extending the time. I actually think it's important to keep the randomization. We can't do it on Zoom, but people, I think we're forgetting, we saw people gaming the system. So it's not about some lazy person who decided at the last minute to show up and speak. People were showing up at signing up at strategic points so they could be the last and have the last word, for example. And it was, in my mind, inequitable for someone, say a single mom who works until 6:30 and then needs to go home and take care of her kid and, you know, get the childcare and then come down and barely makes it in time to sign up on at 7:30. So for me, it was a matter of equity and limiting the ability of someone to game our system. And I think the other parameters we put on it were also just because we were feeling like our public forums were becoming a big free-for-all and not necessarily providing us with valuable input that the city council should be listening to and considering. So I think the pieces on council operating agreements, you know, how we do work session polls and resolutions, I think we could adopt those today, but I agree with Chris that I'd like us to hold off on permanent adoption of the changes we made to public forum. But I would also like council to consider changing the 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes. I think it gives more time for people to make, you know, share their premise, add the detail, and make a closing comment than the 2 minutes does. Thank you.
Hey, Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was going to say the same exact word that Chris said, which is the reason we made these changes was for certainty. And so, and I think that's important. So, so keeping it at 2 minutes is fine with me. It works. The 90 minutes has not been a problem so far. I just wanted to point out that none of this is actually permanent. Whatever we do, we can change, as Mike's always fond of saying. So I think that making it be a pilot, it really doesn't matter that much. We should just, if we're going to have it, let's just adopt these things, move them forward. If we think we need to change these when we come back, if we ever come back to normal, then we can change them then. So because it's not really because it's not permanent. So making it a pilot doesn't really make much sense to me, because we can change it if we need to change it and we get more data. As far as the circumstances where like Jennifer brought up, where people are, where we know an issue is going to be quite controversial and we need to, the council can change that as well and extend the time. If we believe that it's going to be a really long one, we can just extend the time anytime we want. So this isn't a, it's an unbreakable rule. It's supposed to give us some guidance and give people some certainty about it as well. And I think that 90 minutes is more than ample. I always advocate for 60 minutes. So I think 60 minutes is even enough times. I totally agree that we should investigate on the Zoom meetings to be able to have people do video. I think the issues that we initially didn't have that available are resolved, so we can have people show up. It might actually, probably will, I'm almost assured will increase the amount of people that show up if they can see themselves on TV. Thinking of a few people. And Claire's point, the reason we went to randomizing was people were gaming the system. They can't do it in Zoom, but they were. So, we were, and the reason we limited it also was because we were seeing the same people say the same thing over and over and over, and it wasn't really adding to the dialogue or the information that the council's supposed to get or the community's supposed to get when you just say the same thing over and over again, 10 meetings in a row. And so I also agree with what Jennifer said, that in the post-COVID era, we should be allowing Zoom and phone testimony, because I think that even when we're in post-COVID, people might be still apprehensive about doing that. So I think that's a good thing to have us occur, and we'll have better facility in terms of computer and ability to look at this stuff, I'm sure, in the near future as well. Thanks.
Thanks. I have Mike and Greg and Jennifer coming back. I just wanted to chime in briefly, which is, these are actually kind of unusual times. We haven't really tested these well. The 2 minutes has seemed, I think, unnecessarily short, given that with the exception of in the height of the summer protest, we had a couple of very long nights, but the rest of the time we've had, maybe a dozen folks testify. So I think you could really see, whether you call it a pilot or not, or an extension, say, this is how we're doing it now during COVID. when we're back in person, then we get to look at this in a different way. But the pressures that you were experiencing that precipitated these changes aren't really present right now. And so I do think it makes, you can extend to 2.5 minutes easily. I think there's no downside to that because we're just not having these really, really long sustained public forums right now that may come back. Okay, let me just turn then to second round with Mike, then Greg, then Jennifer.
This is my first round, but thank you, Mayor. I would say that
that's right. Sorry.
Much of what I wanted to say was covered already, especially with Alan and Chris and with Claire. But I will say, for the sake of those keeping score at home, and Beth who's kind of trying to take head counts here, I would think too, that I'm for 2 minutes and 60 minutes, and I think the hard certainty of the time frame is critically important. As Chris said, I agree with Alan that 60 would be fine with me. I think Chris's most important point, though, is we changed this stuff in order to fix a problem, and we don't know yet if it did. So I'm not in favor of radically changing anything at this time, but as Alan mentioned, and I often do, we can change it anytime we like if it doesn't seem to work. So I hope that if we change anything, it's, and I think Jennifer's point was very important too. I have been advocating for a long time we should let people participate remotely even before COVID. And I will look forward to seeing us do that as we move forward beyond it. Hopefully someday soon when we can be back in the same room again. Thank you.
Okay, Greg and then Jennifer.
Okay, my mouse wasn't working. So this isn't directly to the issue, but I think it's part of the issue. I think we're going to be in this COVID mode for at least another 12 months or more. When I last saw Dr. Fauci on TV, he was talking about we may not get back to normal until the beginning of 2022. In Fauci, we trust. But the other thing is an access issue. And the access issue for me is the fact that not everybody has a computer device. I mean, we can solve part of that with regard to people phoning in, but it's not really the same as if we have somebody that is connecting with us via Zoom or some other kind of platform. And I will note that a lot of my residents, a lot of the rest of your residents around in each of the wards, have significant economic issues that prevent them from having regular internet service. So there were a lot of laptops distributed in the last few months to students all over this community because they didn't have the devices to be able to connect to their classrooms or do their homework. So that's one point, and that extends to their parents, their grandparents, and other folks. The other thing too is that a lot of people in my area use the Bethel Library to do a lot of the business that they need to do online. And if somebody wants to communicate with us through that mode or mechanism, the library closes at a certain point in time, and people have to make arrangements to get over there, and it becomes complicated. So I just want to see if we can explore some ways that we can look at creating greater access for people to connect with our meetings. I can't believe that we just only had 7 people that were interested in testifying the other night. So let's see what we can do about that. I'm not suggesting we buy a bunch of laptops, but there may be other ways that we can make sure that people have the connections that they need.
Okay, Jennifer and then Betty.
Thanks. So first, I think Greg brings up a really great point, and that might be something that staff can help us with, is increasing access right now, but also after we get back to the new normal, because we already know we have access issues. It's a lot easier for some people than others to come and interface with us. So I know we have some great staff who are good at engagement, that they might be able to give us some suggestions on that. I wanted to say, I thought people made some really good points, especially about how we really haven't had an opportunity to really test this out really well. And I liked Claire's idea of coming back maybe like 3 months after we start actually meeting in person again. We don't know when that is, but I like the 3-month kind of time to test things out and give people time to let us know what they think about it, the changes as well. I'm cool with 2.5 minutes. It is a compromise, literally in the middle. So I'm happy if we want to even try that out now and just see how that goes. It is a little harder with Zoom, and people have, sometimes they accidentally mute themselves or whatever. So giving a little extra time might be a good idea. I also wanted to agree with having the videos on, if we can try that. I know that could cause some issues as well, but it is really hard to, when we can see people's faces, it's just really nice to be able to do that. But even if we don't call it a pilot project, I would like to have some kind of intentional comeback to this and just revisit it, so we can just have I think that's why I was thinking that with pilots, there's like that is automatic. So I just want to make sure that happens even if we don't call it a pilot.
Thank you. Betty.
Thank you. I noticed, I was looking at how long counselors are speaking, and I noticed that most of them use the full 3 minutes and sometimes more than that. And I think that counselors have had more experience preparing to speak, should be able to go 2 minutes better than the general public, who are sometimes afraid of, as Jennifer said. I remember long ago speaking to council, I was scared to death because I was afraid I would go over. I practiced over and over with a timer to be sure I could get done in the time. And if I'd gotten there and been told it changed to 2 minutes, I wouldn't have known what to do. Even though I was experienced at speaking with groups and I've been a teacher and everything, still it was scary. And I think it should be. The certainty is important. If it's going to be 2 minutes, people should know ahead of time. I agree with that. As for the person who had made an effort to get there to a meeting, how about the person who made the real effort to get there and sign up early and then find that she was at the end of the evening or even past the end of the evening? I think that that's another thing of certainty. If you make the effort to get there early, then you should be able to think that you'd be able to speak. And something else we've never done, which I've always thought should happen, is that when a group comes in, like the Raging Grannies, they should get more time because it's a lot of people, and each of them should get the amount of time. And sorry, I might end up using my whole 3 minutes. I think that's it. Thank you.
We came in at under 2 minutes, so there you go, Betty, proving your point. Emily.
Thank you. I will point out you can still game the system. If you're poised, you can be first, and if you want to be, and you can wait. And I do agree with Betty's points. And we won't know until we go back. I'm a little bit confused as what to do with a motion. If we just want to continue on trying this as a pilot, that would be one motion. If we want to put it into our operating agreements, that would be another. And if we do that, I come up to motions to divide because we have different opinions about what it should be. So I'm not sure how to go with this. My personal opinion is continue the pilot with 2.5 minutes. But I don't know, there's a lot of different topics. If we're going to keep it, I can see, you know, how do I vote if I want this but not that? So I kind of want some opinion before I make a motion, if that's okay.
So, and I can jump in a little bit. I've been actually sitting here thinking as I try to think of motions in my mind, and I don't have one for anyone right now because I'm not clear what somebody would want. I think that generally what the motion was going to do is bring back, it wasn't going to adopt anything today. It was going to direct staff to bring back a resolution that would allow you, that would include these changes. So really an option is largely to do nothing today. It just wouldn't be to direct staff to bring back that resolution. You could direct staff to bring back the resolution with the ones that are in, I believe they're in red or green. I'm sorry. The green ones were the ones that weren't piloted. You know, they're being operated under, so it's not necessary. They're doing those. It would probably be easier just to wait and to have a resolution that includes everything. If you want to change it to 2.5 minutes, it could be as simple as continue piloting all of the changes and change 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes. It could be as simple as that. But if I hear more and people want motions, I'll try to push those out to you.
Okay, thank you. Alan, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Two things. One is that the only difference between a pilot and making it permanent is the look back at some certain time. And so my suggestion is that we move all these forward. If someone has a specific thing they want to change, that they bring that up as a motion and we'll vote on that, like the 2.5 minutes. And when the motion comes up for final, I would suggest that we just add that what Jennifer and Claire were talking about, 3 months after we get back to normal, post-COVID, that we review our operating agreements for meetings. And so then this whole discussion about pilot kind of goes away because there's no difference. It's still the operating agreements, whether or not they're permanent or pilot. So just having the look back, I think, is an important part. But if someone wants to make something change, then I think they should do it by a specific motion.
Okay, Emily, so I see you nodding. Does that, and I see Catherine scribbling. So I'm assuming.
Christy had her hand up.
But Christy had her hand up.
Who's got her hand
and
up?
I know what I want to do.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who has a
I
hand
was
up?
just going to share. I don't want to lose the
Oh,
piece
Chris.
around the accessibility to the meetings and thinking about Zoom and people being able to call in. I wanted to let you know that our staff is already thinking about that, especially as we think about alternative spaces for a meeting and what technology can do to make those advancements. And so that's in progress and we'll continue regardless of what it's in the resolution. I don't think that needs to be, we'll continue to report back on the progress being made in that area, but it is something that staff are already looking into. So.
Okay, so Emily, are you clear how you want to put your motion
I'm
forward?
going to follow Councilor Zelinka's suggestion pretty much. First, I'm going to move to change it to 2.5 minutes, and then I'm going to move to continue this pilot project with a review 3 months after we get to meet in person. So I move that we change the speaking time to 2.5 minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Betty, you want to say something about that?
As well as the public?
I meant only the public.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. All in favor of the change from 2 to 2.5 minutes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposed. 2. All right. So that passes 6 to 2. So we'll make that change. Thank you. And now the broader
I move
motion.
to continue this pilot with the 2.5 minute change until we have been meeting in person for 3 months, at which time we'll review it again.
Second.
Okay, Alan, did you want to speak to that?
What we're trying to do here is give specific direction to staff so they're clear about what they're supposed to bring back to us. And there's more than just this. If there's going to be a third motion that we make these changes and they bring back the changes in a resolution. Otherwise, I would suggest as a friendly that we move the changes as amended forward and with a review once we get 3 months past COVID.
I think that's what I meant to do. So I accept
Yeah.
that.
So one of the ways to do that would be to read the actual motion that is in your packet. Because it would be moved to direct staff to return to council with a resolution updating the city council operating agreements to make the piloted changes to the public forum with the new 2.5 minutes and an order of agenda items permanent, and to include the other changes approved by council at its January. So if you want to make that, it would do what Councilor Zelenka is speaking of. You'll come back, you'll have the resolution, it'll include all of those changes. We can include in the resolution, there'd be a look back. But I think that it's different than the pilot program didn't actually amend your operating agreements. They were just being done. So if that is what you want to do, I would recommend withdrawing your current motion with the second and making the actual motion that's in your AIS, and it will capture your 2.5 from 2 to 2.5 minutes.
Well, then if we bring back a resolution, will it have, a number of subjects that will need to be divided?
If you don't want to vote on all of them that are proposed that were in the attachment A, the red and green changes, yes. Then if you don't want to move those forward, you could move to divide or move to what you would actually do. I'm sorry, I'm thinking and talking at the same time. You'd actually just move to amend when the resolution's in front of you, to remove the ones you don't like or add ones you want.
What's the advantage of having a resolution as opposed to just continuing?
Councilors, that's what Councilor Zelenka is proposing. I'll let him speak to that.
Oh, okay. Well, what's the difference? What's the advantage of the other?
So what we did was sort of put these things in our operating agreements. What we're actually asking staff to do is put them in our operating agreements and make them be part of the operating agreements. And we do that by resolution. So if we follow the motion, that will actually move all these things into the operating agreements. We can change them at any time we want, and it will incorporate a look back and the 2.5 minutes. So it's basically just moving forward with all the changes that we said we wanted to do. But the only difference, Emily, between a pilot and making it permanent is the look back. And if we say we want to do a look back once we get past COVID, then there is no difference. So, but I think what we're trying to do is get clear with staff that here's what we want you to do: bring back a resolution that makes these things part of our operating agreements. And that the motion as written with the caveat of 2.5 minutes and a look back post COVID would get us there.
I still don't see why we need a resolution when we haven't even tried them out, but if other counselors want it that way, I guess I won't object.
Well, you can certainly, you have a motion and a second on the table, so that can be voted on. And then the Councilor Zelenka could make the other motion if counselors do want to.
There's actually 11 changes that we're making. It's not just one.
Yeah, so I'm just concerned about, saying it's permanent and saying it's unpermanent when what we're really doing is continuing to try it out. So I'm going to stick with my original motion. We can vote on that.
Okay. Could you read the original motion back again?
Well, it wasn't the one in the AIS.
No, I know. That's why I want to hear it again.
To continue our tryout, our pilot program, until we've been meeting in person for at least 3 months, at which point we will have a review, or for 3 months, we will have a review.
Okay. And that's on the table. And that pilot program, that also includes the other items around the.
No, those weren't part of the
include
pilot.
the other pieces. That's the question that Alan is posing.
Those weren't part of the pilot. Those were just changes.
Yeah, those are part of the pilot. Okay. I just want to make sure I know what's being included in this vote.
I'm not really attached, but
And the way it's in your AIS, it looks like Beth color coded it. So what's in green was not part of the pilot. And Beth, jump in if I'm explaining this wrong. And what is in red is what is being piloted. And really what's being piloted is almost entirely around the public forum. It is entirely around the public forum pieces. There were
Okay.
other changes.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be, okay.
Seems
well, I guess I wasn't thinking
Okay.
about the green ones that much.
Okay.
So, you know.
Okay.
I think what I'm hearing, just as I listen to you, is I'm hearing Councilor Zelenka say, these are our operating agreements. We can change them at any time. And I hear you, Councilor Simple, saying, I want the public to know we're still trying these out. They aren't permanent. So, I mean, if you want to do the, adopt it all as your agreements, knowing you can do it at any time and just direct us to bring back a work session 3 months after we've been in person. I think the issue is like, every time you open them up, they don't always open and close really quickly. So I can understand that, that hesitance to just making it so. But you really do, in theory, have the ability to change them any Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I guess Monday or Wednesday.
I do think it's important, though, for the public to know that we're still working on this, because we started with one idea and now we have COVID, and we're going to make a decision on something that we decided pre-COVID. Yeah. So I think it's important to know it's still on the table. If we need to make yet another motion and make the green ones a resolution, I guess that's okay. I just want the public to know we have not made a decision when we didn't do what we said we were going to do, which was try this out in an in-person forum. So how about that? We're going to make 2 motions.
Okay, I have Chris in the queue to speak to this. So I'm going to let Chris before we go on.
Yeah, if we were going to make it into 2 motions, I would want to know what each of the motions was. As the original person who talked about continuing the pilot, one of the reasons was because of this extraordinary circumstance. But I really hadn't thought about the fact that there was a whole series of things that we wanted to put into the operating agreement beyond, just the 1 or 2 we're talking about now. And so I could see us going ahead and saying, let's bring back the changes to our operating agreements that cover all of those. And if we say explicitly in that, we will review it after 3 months. That I think does what Emily's saying. We need to send a signal that says, we're going to look back at this and we're going to look at this seriously after 3 months to see if it is still satisfying what you and we want to be able to do. But it also takes care of all of this housekeeping stuff we want to do. By continuing the pilot, that satisfies a couple of things, but it creates problems for some other things. And I think that's what you're trying to say. Well, let's just have 2 motions. It's starting to get more confusing. It's starting to get more complicated. If we just say, let's pass the motion that was here with a provision that it'll be 2.5 minutes, I'm great with that. And also we guarantee we will look at this 3 months after we have restored face-to-face meetings. That also sends a clear signal that we want to consider if there's any additional changes we want to make. Yeah, I mean, whether we do a pilot or not do a pilot, we can change these at the drop of a hat. And so whether they're in the operating agreements or not in the operating agreements, they're our operating agreements. They can be changed at any time. So I'm comfortable going ahead and passing this just to take care of all the housekeeping stuff. But I agree, you absolutely want to be able to send a message to the public that we're nailing in a look back review at 3 months after we've restored regular meetings. So I don't think it needs to be 2 motions. I think we can just do this knowing we're going to come back in 3 months.
Okay, Betty, yes. Would you like to speak to it?
I move to amend to eliminate the randomization of speakers.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. So are we ready
That's
to vote?
something separate. We can't add that to this motion. That would be like the 2.5 minute one.
We have to vote on the amendment.
We have to vote on the amendment.
Yeah.
And then
Then
And-
the main
Okay.
motion.
Vote on your motion. So any further discussion about that proposed amendment? Okay. All in favor of removing randomization, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that goes down. So we're back to Emily's original motion, which is continue with pilot with the, including the change of 2.5 minutes. So ready to vote on that? Alan?
That doesn't address the things that weren't in the pilot. So the things on the second page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 changes that we made on the second page were not part of the pilot.
Right.
So is that going to be a separate motion?
So that can be a second motion to proceed with those changes that were not part of the pilot. Yes.
It could either be, you could either make that a second motion and that comes back, or you can just continue waiting like where you are right now and it all would come back at one time. Either totally works.
So we could actually do nothing and just have changed to 2.5 minutes.
Right.
Easier, I mean, bringing back it just takes your time on your agenda to have the resolution come with with the pilot left out. You absolutely can do that. We can bring the resolution back with the green changes in it. Just make you can just make a separate motion to direct staff to do that. You can do that.
Okay.
We just, it feels to me like we just want to leave a clear trail of breadcrumbs here about where we are on each of these changes. So, so if it needs 2 motions just to say the other changes or that we pack it all into one motion, it just feels like we need to leave some clarity 9 months from now when this comes back to us. I just don't want to, I don't want to be in a state of confusion, but maybe I'd be the only one. I don't know.
I don't think this is worth all this time and agony.
It's probably not.
So I'm just, since I'm the president right now, I'm going to go with, we're going to keep it as a pilot and review it. And then we can do the second one to take in all the ones in green.
Okay, all right. All in favor of that motion, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 1. Okay, so that passes. So do you want to do a second motion on the other housekeeping things?
I move that we bring back a resolution to adopt the green items.
Second.
Okay, any need to discuss that further? All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, that passes. Thank you very much. And thank you for just navigating the specifics there. And we're onward and we're done early. So everyone have a good afternoon. We are adjourned.
Thank you.